Good morning, everybody. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about chapters 7, 8, and 9 as you finished off the first section of the book. 7, 8, 9 are pretty amazing. I think, if you haven't read the story before, you haven't heard of it before, the revelations in chapter 7 alone are pretty amazing. What we want to take from chapter 7, first off, is we get Lyra in a new family environment, right? And remember what we talked about with Lyra before, that she has really different parental figures. She has the master of Jordan College, who I guess loves her and cares for her, although, he's distant. He's not really a father. He's not a nurturer, I would say. He educates her, certainly, and we could argue that he cares for her, but not a normal kind of guardian situation. Then we have her uncle, Lord Asriel, who I keep telling you is not a nice man. He really isn't. And he leaves her all the time, right? He shows up and then he leaves, and shows up and leaves, and she can't come with him. So he's quite strict. He threatens her constantly, right? So I think Lord Asriel is a very unusual figure. And then the next one we get, of course, is Mrs. Coulter, who certainly is not a nurturer. She's psychotic. She's just a terrifying human being. Absolutely monstrous. So the next now, she escapes Mrs. Coulter, and she gets to the Egyptians, and she meets John Faa. Now, John Faa and Lord Asriel, a lot of parallels there, right? John Faa is this massive, right here, even though he's old, he's a big man, bull-necked and powerful, tall. He, may as well have been made of rock, basically. He's got this air of authority, right? So he is both something to admire, someone to admire and to fear, a lot like Lord Asriel. So there's that, and she's drawn to John Faa. And notice that John Faa is one of the few people she doesn't lie to. She just instantly tells him the truth. Maybe it's out of fear, but she tells him the truth. The one thing that's interesting is on page 112, Lyra really takes to this Egyptian lifestyle. And it talks all about how she's learning to be kind of Egyptian, and she's so happy with herself. But Ma Costa says, you ain't Egyptian, the middle of page 112. You ain't Egyptian, Lyra. You might pass for Egyptian with practice, but there's more to us than Egyptian language. There's deeps in us and strong currents. We're water people, and you're a fire person. What you're most like is a marsh fire. Deceptive, that's what you are. And Lyra was hurt because she's just desperate for family, right? We look at this with more mature perspective, and we realize this is a little girl who was just desperate to belong, and she finds a place to belong to, and the Ma Costa says, you're not like us, no matter what, you're not like us. You're deceptive. And Lyra is hurt, and she says, no, I'm not. I've never deceived anyone. And that's a lie. We've already witnessed her lie to I don't know how many people, right? Lyra is a liar. That's no accident that her name is like that. So when she says, I haven't lied to anyone, like, whoa, Lyra, yes, you have. And why are you hurt that you're not Egyptian? I think it's just because she's a little girl who is desperate to belong, and she just got told she doesn't really, right? And that must really hurt. So we have to remind ourselves constantly what Lyra's motivation is. Lyra's motivation is sure adventure, yes, and loyalty to her friends. She's loyal to Roger and Lord Asriel. But also she's just desperate for belonging, for family, I would say. So this makes it even more ironic then that in this chapter, Lyra hears the story of her upbringing, and a big dun 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 moment, maybe if you hadn't figured it out. She finds out two things. Mrs. Coulter is her mom, and Lord Asriel is her father. And wow, that's crazy, because she is the daughter of a psychopathic mother and a very cold and dominating father. So interesting, right? And remember, Lyra's going to be the great betrayer. We won't know if Lyra is going to grow up to be someone to be feared and monstrous, right? Is she going to grow up to be this terrible, deceiving betrayer full of rage? Well, she certainly has the origin story for one. So that's interesting. But what I think is fascinating, and I know that I didn't really think about this until I read the book several times, but Mrs. Coulter and Lord Asriel are fascinating characters. And one of the things I really actually feel a little bit for is Mrs. Coulter, because you look at the situation. She's married to this man, this powerful politician, and she falls in love with Lord Asriel, this dashing, charismatic, rich kind of adventurer, and they have a child, Lord Asriel and Mrs. Coulter. Her husband takes revenge, and basically she loses her husband. There's a scandal, right? And this is a world where women, we don't see them in a lot of positions of power, so it's a sexist universe. And she's taken, this scandal kind of strips her authority, it strips her power, they take everything from her. And she now is the head of the General Oblation Board. She's high up in the magisterium. She's a person of authority. So I wonder, as we move on with this book, look at her reaction when everything was taken away from her by authority. She is going to work within the authority to climb the ranks. No one is going to take, boss her around. No one is going to take anything away from her. So she's motivated by never being dominated again. And the General Oblation Board takes these kids. We're going to find out in the next section what they do, and it's horrifying. But her motivation is to be, no one will ever dominate me again, and I will work within the system to make sure I'm at the top of the system, and I will always be in charge. Now, Lord Asriel, he loses his money, he loses everything except his name. He's a lord, right? He puts his daughter, doesn't want her raised in a religious environment, puts her in a college, and basically says her mother can't have any contact with her, don't you dare. Basically just threatens everyone, right? And then leaves. So it's not clear that he really cares about his daughter. He cares enough that he doesn't want to raise a certain way. But then he abandons her, really, and just goes off and explores. Lord Asriel's reaction to the authority taking everything away from him is a little different. Mrs. Coulter wants to work within the system and climb that pyramid, right? Lord Asriel wants to burn the system to the ground. His response to all this is like, no one will ever dominate me again or control my life, so I'll destroy all authority. Mrs. Coulter, work within authority and dominate it. Lord Asriel, totally destroy authority. Right? So they're two very relatable characters. I actually feel sorry for them, as much as I can't believe I feel sorry a little bit for Mrs. Coulter, but I understand her. And that is fantastic characterization. That's one of the reasons why Philip Pullman is so successful, because I've told my class, my grade 9 class, my grade 8 class, my grade 7 class, and if I haven't taught you before, you know this. If you want to make a story that people listen to, have a great conflict. If you want to make a story that makes money, have great characters that people understand and sympathize with, characters that people miss when they're gone, right? This is amazing, these characters. Even though they're evil and I just get so mad at them, I understand where they're coming from, right? This is incredible. So, and these are Lyra's parents. So what a revelation there, just amazing. So that chapter 7 is just loaded with material. Now, chapter 8 and on page 135, one of the things we get is John Faw is talking to the Egyptians about Lord Asriel, and on the bottom of 135 he lists all these things that Lord Asriel has done. Like, he's a hero. He's done all these things to help Egyptian people out, and Lyra's proud of her father now, right? So she is proud of him, she admires him, and she's terrified of him. It's just amazing. So in chapter 9, we get a big revelation, right? Chapter 8 is all about the Egyptians are planning to go up north to get the kids back, and they're going to basically send a big war party up, and Lyra's not allowed to go. Chapter 9, what we learn is Lyra starts to read the alethiometer. She's taken under her the wing of Farder Coram, who's this gentle, beautiful, wonderful guy, gentle soul, kind of like the master, really. Anyway, she's taken under his wing, and she's learning to read the alethiometer, and she's learning to read it really quickly and intuitively. She doesn't need books. She doesn't need weeks of research like the people in the magisterium. She's just learning to read it intuitively, and we'll get to that. Why does a child have an easier time seeing the truth than an adult? Is fascinating as we get further into this book. But one of the things that happens, of course, is she starts to predict the future. Not really, she just knows the truth of things, so she can see the situation as it is. And the Egyptians realize what a powerful source of intelligence this is, so they agree to take her along. Also, these spy flies attack Lyra in chapter 9, right? These little bugs that Mrs. Coulter has sent to knock her out and attack her, and they destroy one. One goes away, and they capture one, and she puts it in a little tin. Now that, you got to remember that, there's a bit of foreshadowing. She captures this spy fly, this angry little spirit-powered robotic assassin sucker, and she puts it in a little tin, and she kind of keeps it. So that's going to be something that comes up later. But now she's been taken on the journey, so she is actually on her way to the north, and that's where we leave this first section. It really is all about kind of Lyra and her motivation. In the next section, of course, they're going to the far north, and they are going to see what happens to these poor kids up in the north, and then the story will move on. Okay, so that's a a summary of chapters 7, 8, and 9. You're going to be reading another 3 chapters this week, and it's a lot of reading, okay? We got a short week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but we need to get through this book pretty quickly. So I need you to do quite a bit of reading. You're going to read 10, 11, and 12. That is 3 chapters, and it's quite a bit of reading in 4 days. Well, you got the weekend too, but I need you to do that reading. The other thing I need you to think about, and this is in the instructions, is start thinking about people's demons. Right? Lord Asriel has a snow leopard. Mrs. Coulter has a golden monkey that never talks. One of the only animals, demons we see never talk. Father Coram has this. Father Coram has this beautiful cat, this gigantic, luxurious cat. Start thinking about people's demons, because if you've been in my classroom, you've seen the demon masks on the wall that kids have done. I've had years and years of collecting these beautiful demon masks. So what you're going to be doing at the end of this section 2 is doing a creative project where you come up with a demon, an animal, a spirit totem that represents you, and do a mask or some kind of representation of it with a written explanation of why it represents you. That's what's coming. It's not due this week or anything like that, but that's what's coming. So I want you to start thinking about what your spirit animal, your demon, your animal representation of you would be. Everybody wants lions and predators and wolves, but you know what? Cows are awesome. So think about that. Do the reading. I'll have a video on 10, 11, and 12. See you later, guys.